Hi, my name is Blake Bettner, Managing Editor of Worn & Wound, and I am live in the IWC booth at Watches and Wonders 2023. I'm thrilled to be joined by Chris Grainger, CEO of IWC. Chris, thank you for joining me.
Well, thanks Blake for coming.
You have a new watch release this year.
We have a new watch release as well. It's the Ingenieur. It's the comeback of the original Genta design translated into a modern wristwatch with the Ingenieur as an integrated steel bracelet watch. Back in our portfolio, back in our collection now for 2023.
We interviewed you on the podcast a couple years ago and asked you about the Ingenieur.
Yeah.
You said, this is the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night.
Indeed.
How long have you been thinking about this watch?
Well, ever since I started in this job, really. I mean, it's more than 5 years now that we've been intent on bringing back the Ingenieur, developing designs, really trying to distill the essence out of the various iterations that we had over the years. And it's a very interesting conversation because, you know, there's a lot of questions being asked when you bring the Ingenieur back. But beyond that point, when it comes to what really is at the heart of the Ingenieur DNA, then the opinions vary quite a bit.
Sure.
That process of whittling it down to what it is that makes an Ingenieur, and when it stops being an Ingenieur and how you put it into a modern wristwatch, that was quite an iterative process, but we got there in the end, and I'm super happy about the result.
The watch turned out beautifully. It clearly doesn't look like an exact reissue of the watch.
Yeah.
It looks like a modern take on the Ingenieur. I think most notably due to the crown guards. I feel like this is where a lot of the early chatter around this watch is. Of course, the original did not have crown guards against the case. Was that something that you went back and forth on?
No, it wasn't something we particularly went back and forth on, but it just, overall in terms of proportions, it just gave it a more a modern look in the end, and we felt that the watch looked just much better with crown guards on than crown guards off. Yeah.
I agree. I like the crown guards myself. The proportions you really nailed on this watch. It's 40 millimeters in diameter, less than 11 in thickness. Yeah. The bracelet feels truly premium on this watch. And I like that you still have the push pin to release the links of the back. Yeah. This feels like a real return to form of like a true tool Ingenieur watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we spent a lot of time on that ergonomic part as well. You remember that original design had the kind of nose attachment. You had quite a bit of gapping and then quite a wide bracelet. And we said, okay, how do we fix that? By having this semi-attached locked center link that actually makes a beautiful transition, and you still have the shoulders on the case, right? You get the edginess on the case, but then the bracelet actually flows down really nicely over the wrist, and it's just super comfortable to wear as well.
Chris, the booth here though is beautiful. Tell me about the inspiration here. I see you've got a car in here.
Absolutely. So we're taking people back to a 1970s inspired design studio, design lab, engineering lab. That's the kind of vibe. So you have both sort of a museum minimalism when it comes to the way we've created the booth, but then you have some objects which remind you of the 70s. So we have the great Braun FS80 TV here playing a retro advertising spot. We've got the retro ads here, Back from the Future, the Gentleman's Choice, and we're showing another design icon of the 1970s, the beautiful Mercedes-Benz C111 Free, which was actually the record-breaking car that did the NADO endurance test back in '78, broke 8 or 9 world records at the time. And really for us, that is that incarnation of how that rupture happened in design from the classically styled 300 SL Gullwing, which came before it, to the C111, which was radically forward-looking, very aerodynamic, space-age concept, and then of course a new technology in this car as well.
So this is analogous to the Ingenieur, of course, goes back to the 50s. It had a much more demure design, and then 1976, it kind of shatters into whole new territory.
Exactly, because in those days you had the height of the quartz crisis in the Swiss watchmaking industry, so you had the disruption actually happening, and the gold prices went through the roof as well. So a lot of brands, including IWC, started to think, okay, what is the future going to be like? And then with the help of Gerald Genta, who's probably one of the most famous watch designers of all time, we said, okay, how does the future for a luxury watch look in a steel sports watch? Also, where for the first time we're expressing construction of a watch rather than hiding it. You have this screw-in bezel with the visible bore holes nowadays, the 5 screws, and that's really been a milestone in reinterpreting luxury.
Yeah, well, the watch turned out beautifully. Love the texture, love the aqua color as well. Congratulations on the release. What color is your preference? I see you're wearing
aqua, you see what I'm wearing, so you know,
okay. All right, well.
I do love a bit of color, and I think that, you know, with a half polished, half brushed bracelet, it actually brings out the color beautifully. So it's, I'm partial to a bit of color.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations again on the launch. This is the new IWC Ingenieur 40 Automatic, I believe is the full name. There's a lot more details on this on IWC.com and on wornandwound.com, so be sure to go check that out. Chris, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Blake.
Really appreciate you.